In just a few hours, a legal battle over President Trump's deployment of the National Guard in California returns to a courtroom. A federal appeals court will consider California Governor Gavin Newsom's lawsuit, which accused the president of stoking tensions and wasting resources. If the judges rule in Newsom's favor, control of those troops could be returned to him. CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson joins us now from Los Angeles. So, Jessica, remind us about the governor's argument here and what we've seen from the ruling so far. I think for most Americans, they understand that the president of the United States is the commander-in-chief, but generally speaking, deploying the National Guard on U.S. soil often comes as a recommendation from the governor of that state, who is within California, in this case, the commander-in-chief of the California National Guard.
That's right. I love the way you teed this up for me because, yes, under normal circumstances, the California governor is the commander in chief of the California National Guard. But we aren't under normal circumstances. The president issued a memo about a week ago, and he said, I'm federalizing the National Guard. And he pointed to the specific statute, Title 10, Section 12406. That's going to be important today as we listen to the oral arguments before the Ninth Circuit. And he says, I have the authority over the governor's wishes not to do so. I have the authority to federalize the National Guard. And so the conversation we're going to hear among California and the Department of Justice on two sides and the three-judge panel will all center on whether or not the president under the statute did have the authority to call up the National Guard. Now, we can get into all of the details. There are going to be specifics like whether or not judges can even second guess a president's decision, that the triggering facts are there, that there's a rebellion or the danger of a rebellion, or that he's unable to execute the laws through the normal forces. Those are the triggering facts you need to say, I am going to federalize the National Guard. And then there's going to be even more detailed arguments about whether or not the Trump administration followed proper procedures. The specific statute says orders have to be issued through the governors. Did that happen here? So those are the things we're going to hear about today at 3 p.m. Eastern when, again, this three-judge panel reviews the case.
So this case apparently only applies to the National Guard. We know that Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, along with the president, mentioned deploying United States Marines into Los Angeles, which seems sort of strange to me, given the Marines' overall mission. Yes, of course, they know how to fight in urban environments and have done so in the past, but they're part of the Navy. And so I just wondered what the thinking was or the rationale behind the idea of deploying Marines into an American city.
So I think part of what we're looking at, obviously, is a show of force. Now, in terms of the legality, which obviously is what I can speak to more, you're exactly right, Vlad, that we're talking about two separate tracks. So what we just talked about is a statute that allows the president to federalize the National Guard. And there's a question about whether or not he had the authority to do so here. There's a separate question, there's a separate track that the president uses in order to say, I'm deploying the Marines. One thing I did want to mention to your question about, why we would call up the Marines, what they can do, I want to emphasize that both under the statute that could allow the president to federalize the National Guard and under DOD directives, Department of Defense directives, that could allow the president to deploy the Marines, we're talking about the National Guard and the Marines acting in a support role. So at this point, the president has not invoked the Insurrection Act, and this is all about whether or not they can support federal agents.
Really fascinating. Jessica Levinson for us. Really just sort of an interesting breakdown. And so it'll be interesting to see how those judges rule. I know that there's been a lot of back and forth, which you helped to clarify for us. As always, we appreciate you. Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks.